if you just think that you don't have to understand the basics and let me just vibe code my way into a product's entire life cycle, now that's going to be a problem down the line. That down the line is not very far.
So the developer will always remain like this inherent important piece in the puzzle to solve all these problems, right?
Of course, we will still be the steerers of the future.
Hi everyone, we are recording live from Google I/O Connect in Bangalore. And the atmosphere outside is really energetic and vibrant. The topic that we're discussing is that there's now a way to build complex apps using simple prompts in English. You can build ML flows, data pipelines, and that's possible because of coding agents that work with state-of-the-art models like Gemini. But there are gaps. So what does it mean for the SDE role? And today we have someone with us who's worked very closely with the product teams that build this and also the users who use this. So Abirami Sukumaran, thank you for joining us. Why don't you tell us about yourself, what keeps you busy and excited?
Thank you for having me here. And I'm Abirami Sukumaran, staff developer advocate at Google. I predominantly focus on cloud databases and AI. And I work closely with the developers and practitioners from community, customers, startups. And the most enjoyable part is to work with the latest and greatest of tech, particularly in the data and AI area, and bringing out our version or my version of that in a form and approach that is easy for developers from all of these backgrounds to follow and bring it to life and see businesses using them. So I think that is something that excites me.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that is very relevant to what we're discussing today. Some CEOs and developers say that more than 90% of the code is written by AI. In their companies. And AI came up as a Copilot. So it was autocompletes and chat applications to ask questions, etc. So has it gone from that Copilot to being the actual pilot? Like how does it affect the SD role? And even other engineering roles, like we discussed earlier, like ML engineers or data engineers. So how does it affect these roles?
Personally, my take on this is that everyone needs to have that intelligence and have that vision for what we are trying to build. The passion for wanting to solve a problem rather than taking technology and trying to shove a solution to some problem that never exists, right? So time and again, this has been a major discussion. Business drives everything, right? We need to have a reason for why something leads the way, why we need to implement something. So of course, I would take that into picture and say that everyone, the SDEs or whoever, the builders, the developers of the world, they have to have that vision for what they are solving. Your idea, the ideator that you are, the leader that you are, the visionary that you are has not been taken away. What has come about is how efficiently you can get things done. So previously, when we were not so exposed to generative AI or the state that it is today in terms of vibe coding or even for that matter coding for the most part, all of way before all of these things, we take so much time, like a few months at least, to roll out an idea into an application or a product. That doesn't mean that we stopped innovating. We still continue to innovate. It's just that the pipeline, the process, the time it took to go to progress an idea to an application or roll out into reality took so much time that has been made efficient now. And why is that a bad thing? As SDEs and as builders and developers, your vision will continue to lead the way. So the way I see it, I think it's a great opportunity for us to continue to innovate, for us to continue to come up with these right approaches and right things to solve. Like I always say, find something that you, not just a technology, a piece of technology that will solve or that needs to be used, but find a problem that needs to use it. And you can solve using that.
So you have the useful problem to solve, which helps somebody. And I think AI actually enhances and uses the vision of the developer and their intent, judgment to actually enhance their output, right? One of the things that people say is that the SD roles will vanish. So that's not happening then. Do you see any future in the long term where this Copilot to Pilot curve extrapolates and goes on to replace a developer? So the developer will always remain like this inherent important piece in the puzzle to solve all these problems, right?
Of course, we will still be the steerers of the future.
What about Google? Like, has it changed the expectations from people it hires? Like, are they looking for newer skills now as they hire people compared to what they were doing in the pre-Gen AI era?
Of course, the exposure is definitely something that we continue to look at. It's not something new. Gen AI is one phase, but we have come across several phases like that, and there's always new things that get added and you need to be exposed of before you appear for an interview, whether it's Google or anywhere for that matter. So yes, definitely all the new things and all the fancy things that are out there, the things that transform your day into such efficient pieces of work is something that we look at from all the candidates.
All right. So now talking about the software development itself. So vibe coding is something that is being used a lot, right? And I think from my perspective, it means that you have a thought about building something, you give that thought or vibe to the AI and it does the engineering for you. So what do you think about vibe coding and, any kind of pitfalls that you think that accompany it?
One major pitfall, there's a joke that's going around. I don't know if someone has forwarded that meme to you or
What's
not.
that joke?
Who's Jason?
I've
Because
heard that.
if you're completely unaware, and if it's still okay to be completely unaware for prototypes, for showcasing your vision to the world, but for prototypes and showing that this is exactly what you're trying to design, it's totally fine. But when you're trying to build it further, evolve it into an architecture or something that's sustainable, that goes past the initial idea and transforms into a product or something that gets to the hands of users and customers, then definitely you need to go past the phase of vibe coding, right? I'm not saying you cannot vibe code. You have to use AI tools to optimize your code to make sure you're taking the best and the most efficient routes to solve a particular problem. There's definitely so much benefit, so many benefits. But I have seen a lot of people struggle because they don't. If you just think that you don't have to understand the basics and let me just vibe code my way into a product's entire life cycle, now that's going to be a problem down the line. Not even that down the line is not very far. So there needs to be some understanding. Your vision should be yours. You need to own the passion and the drive for what exactly is going on. You need to understand. Now again, it's not like every founder is not a tech founder, right? You probably use technology just to solve a problem. Whoever is hired to be responsible for that should be capable of completely comprehending and making the best decision for what's right for your business.
Yeah, and I think you're right that there are probably a set of problems that are very good for vibe coding. Like for example, the MVP thing that you mentioned. Like if there's a founder trying to pitch an idea to somebody, instead of hiring a developer team or themselves spending a lot of hours developing the whole product, they probably vibe code something which might have bugs or security issues or something, but just for the demo, and it gets them going. At least removes the roadblock towards that pitch. And probably for a bigger product which you're rolling out to users, you still vibe code, but you do that with your own control over the process. Right? Now it's about agents, right? And there are a lot of sessions over here are discussing about agents, right? And agents are everywhere. I get a marketing call, or if I have a support call where actually a voice AI agent might answer. So what do you think about agents? How have they transformed our lives and all? Do you use agents in your day-to-day process, in your work, otherwise outside of work?
Every generative AI or generation tool or assistant that you're using today, like the Gemini assistant that you're talking to, or the productivity tools that you're using, like Anti-Gravity IDE, the Anti-Gravity Agent Manager, or the CLI, whatever it is you're using, it's an agent that you're talking to. So yes, I build a lot of agents. I build with agents. I work with agents. So yes, agents are there in day-to-day lives. Honestly, if I have to be very honest and state my opinion about this, I would say we have always automated. If you're the person who finds ways to be innovative, I'm one such person who has always looked at ways to automate stuff.
Right.
Has the automation gone to another level now, actionable and sequencing a lot of things, has some design patterns that it follows to solve a specific problem for you? Yes, agent has transformed that. But automation itself, in its core nature, has done that for us even in the past. A lot of things have been automated. However, with agentic evolution now, it's even the hardest possible tasks are
right. Some like subjective tasks which probably cannot
more
do rules
efficient.
be probably done with agents where the agent decides on something.
Yes. So yes, I do use those agents, and I think that's the way to be.
And have you talked to enterprises who are trying to adopt agents? How do enterprises approach this? How should they approach it? And I've also heard of the statistic that a lot of agentic implementations in enterprises, they work well in the POC stage, but whenever they see the production stage, they don't perform that well. Sometimes fail, and a very high percentage.
Yeah.
So have you seen that in your experience, or how should enterprises approach building agentic automations for their companies?
This is a study in 2025 based on some popular study. It was very commonly reported that a lot of enterprises and startups, they pushed for building agents within the organization. They started building a lot, but how many of them actually reached production? And how many of them returned had return on investment? Right. So those are the numbers that look very less and negligible even in the recent past. Now it's getting better. Like people are consciously building and looking for other ways to get that clarity of productionizing your agents. But of course, when something goes to production, even at the design phase, you're thinking about latency, solving for security, monitoring, observability, cost, the data storage capacity, the archival strategy. So all of these things come into play. And I think those are the deciding factors. And at every single point in the past, up until like earlier this year, we were still looking at, okay, this model is better, which model should I use? But now people are talking more about the architecture. It's not only the model that can function on its own. Yes, the model decides the precision, the accuracy of what you want to convey, take from your user and convey to your user, right? Of course, and the security protocols, the adherence to standards and policies and other things will decide which model or which provider you're going to go with. There are so many options right now, and we have so many with with Gemini's family of models, and we have Gemma if you want to do it on-prem, self-managed, and everything. However, it's not just the model alone that's going to solve the problem. You have to think of it as an ecosystem. The entire architecture that your application runs on, it's your runtime, it's your database. You have to think about your security layer, memory, which is your memory for agents. And the whole agentic framework is its own architecture. What design pattern are you going to follow? Are you going to sequence it? Or are there going to be parallel ones? Or is it, there are so many different ways to approach this. So yeah, looking at it, I think we are on a right track right now. From when we started, with all we did was just wrap a model as an API endpoint, and then deploy that and say, I have an agentic application running. That's not the case anymore. People are looking at the architecture as an ecosystem overall.
I think you've given an excellent description of what I also work with ADK almost every day, and how you define the whole architecture. So I think this gets us to Google. So enterprises are adopting this, and there are a lot of things to take care of. So I think Google has the Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform, and I think they have the build, scale, govern, and optimize sections of it. So what does Google have to offer? What are the maybe key things that enterprises can pick up from there to bring their agentic workflows to life?
So when we're talking about the end-to-end architecture of these multi-agent or multi-agent systems or applications, like you said, the build part, building with the agents, building the agents.
Yes.
So when you say with the agents, you of course use platforms like IDEs like Anti-Gravity IDE, or you're using Google AI Studio, or you're using your own IDEs, integrated development environments, with the CLI, command line agents like Anti-Gravity,
all the surfaces
CLI.
that we can work with.
Or you can use the code assist, or you can use Gemini just on it, just as a conversational agent, and ask for questions. So there are multiple ways to build on top of, right? Of course, you have all the standards that you can select. You have the models, choice of the model, and so many things. And then you have a layer where you're getting to build your application. Now you have to plan your data strategy. You need to do the data ingestion. You need to have a storage strategy. You need to know what are the different types of databases that I have. How am I going to orchestrate all of this formats and shapes and size of databases, data sources that I have? It's not just going to be a single row and table database anymore. Data is stored as images, videos. It's going to be JSON objects. Don't ask me who's JSON. No, I'm kidding. Right? And so how are we going to orchestrate all of these things using something that makes development easier, but also is easy on the cost, but also makes sure that all your data operations and everything is taken into account? So we talk about MCP servers. We have managed MCP servers. You also have the toolbox for databases, which is an open source service, which lives there as an orchestration or a unification layer for all of your database tools as a single pane of glass interface. And you use that in your agentic application. So all of these different multiple things help you orchestrate your data, that is your tools, to your agent. And then you have the security part where you have model armor.
Yeah, model armor service,
So, and you can, once you enable that, it screens the requests, it screens the responses. So you can set up what kind of screening you want, whether it's PII screening, or you want profanity screening, or you want any other information that your jailbreaking screening and stuff like that. And we also need to talk about another important thing, which is the topology of how your agents are talking to each other. So that is there. There's agent topology as part of the GEAP. Memory is another important thing, because when it comes to building agents or agentic applications in your entire the ecosystem of your business and technology, you need to make the experience personalized and customized for your users.
Yeah.
For example, if I'm using an agent to buy, say, pants or skirts
Yeah.
or anything, outfits for that matter,
Right.
I want the agent to remember that maybe
What is
I
your preference
don't
or-
buy shoes that are made of leather,
Yeah.
or I don't wear leather or something like that.
right.
So let's say once I tell the system, listen, I don't want any leather in any of the things that I order,
Right.
that is
So
a fact. The system should identify that this user
It'll remember that
does
for you.
not buy leather as a principle or as a preference, whatever it is. But now that is a fact. The system should treat that as a fact, and the next time should remember that this is what she likes, and this is maybe I'll recommend this to her this time. So that level of thing, because now everyone's lazy. We
Yes.
want things summarized.
Yeah.
We don't read something that's 20 pages long. We want it condensed
Condensed,
to
yeah.
2 pages or something that we can read
Want
and
it fast
understand
and
really
in a convenient
quickly,
manner, yeah.
which is possible now. That's
Yes.
that's the most amazing part. No offense to the folks that wrote it for 20 pages,
Yeah.
but it's in fact getting the reach higher for those people like me who write so much when it comes to whether it's a book or something, my thesis for that matter. I didn't have a problem writing that. But when I think about how the readers are going to take it, now it's easy with generative AI technology to translate that, right? But anyway, so the whole point is with the level of attention span that is available out there, personalization and customization is really key. These two are keys for keeping the customers in your scope.
Right.
Otherwise, they just churn out, right? Or there's always another platform that's going to understand them better.
Yes. Yeah.
So those things are possible with the memory service. It's either session memory, or you can have the memory
Persistent
bank,
memory,
memory bank, or you can use your databases and build custom memory on your own.
Yeah.
So there's so many other things I can keep talking, but I'll
Yeah. I think GEAP actually helps, people do this implicitly. So they don't have to be explicit about it. There are a lot of services that automatically act on your behalf if you enable them. And that's one great thing, because a lot of enterprises, since it's very new, they don't have the expertise to do everything on their own. So I think it's one of the best, developer ecosystems and platform out there for agentic AI. And I think you mentioned another important point about personalization. So I guess AI is something that enables this. Probably previous to this, you would have generic rules, but now you can have like a user specific condition which says, for this user, present the output in this particular fashion. So there's a scope to condense it in the style of that user, or, order close in the style of the user, so on. So that's great.
100%.
So I think that's all we want to talk about. Any final piece of advice for anyone who's viewing? I guess a lot of people are software developers or other engineers who might be seeing this podcast. Or any advice for them? Anything that comes to mind that you would?
I wouldn't say it's an advice, but like I always say, I follow that as a practice, is that fall in love with the problem, find something passionate to put all your interest and effort in, rather than taking a piece of technology and trying to solve that. If the piece of technology is your interest, that's totally fine, but find the right problem to solve with it, right?
Yeah.
So that solves a lot for how that's being adopted, whether your user is a developer or your user is the customer is an end user solving for themselves, solving for your country, depending on how you're planning to use it. So that's one thing. And then data is here to stay.
Right.
So how you fall in love with the problem is by understanding it, by grounding it in data, keeping it contextually relevant, and always use whether you're using vector embeddings, I always talk about it. Make sure your models and your data is intuitive in nature. It's intuitive in nature, meaning don't push your code, don't push your intelligence to the application layer. Keep your intelligence close to the data, because that's the future. Data's here to stay.
So those are great thoughts to live and work by. So thanks a lot, Abirami, for joining us. And I think your insights and expertise would be very useful to the people who are watching this podcast. So thanks a lot.
Thank
It
you.
was very nice talking to you.
Likewise.